At my sister's wedding reception, I said my name, but the staff seemed confused. Sorry, your name isn't on the list. Stunned, I asked my mother. She smirked. Did you honestly think you were invited? Strangers aren't allowed. I smiled quietly. Then I'll live as a stranger, and I walked away. But during the ceremony, my mother's phone began ringing nonstop. Can you imagine being completely erased from your own sister's wedding? Not just forgotten, but actively blocked from being there by your own mother. What would you do if the very person who raised you tried to rewrite history, all to keep you from the most important day of your sister's life? My story is about betrayal, a shocking twist, and how true family bonds can still shine through, even after everything. My name is Mary Wilson, and I'm a nurse at a busy general hospital on the north side of Chicago. After a grueling 12-hour shift, I dragged my tired body home. That day, the world felt a little softer, a little kinder, blanketed in a fresh, pure white snow, the kind of winter scenery I always loved, especially after a tough day. When I opened my apartment door, a small shelf with my father's photograph was the first thing I saw. Papa! He passed away from lung cancer 5 years ago. Every single time I see that warm, familiar smile of his, my chest tightens. I'm home, Papa, I whispered, just like always. There was no reply, of course, but I still felt his gentle eyes watching over me. During his illness, I put my career on hold to become his full-time caregiver. My nursing knowledge was a huge help, but the most important lesson? You need to value your own life more, Mary. That was one of the last things he ever said to me. Looking back, I think he knew me better than anyone. He understood. I heated up yesterday's leftovers. A simple dinner, but enough. As I ate, a familiar pang of guilt hit me. I hadn't answered my mother's call again today. Eleanor, since Dad died, she's become colder, sharper, especially towards me. But with my younger sister, Caitlin, she's always been unusually indulgent. This blatant favoritism was nothing new. It had been like this since we were kids. But when Dad was alive, he was the balance. Now, it was just different. Mary, why do you wear such cheap clothes? Surely a nurse's salary could afford something better. Mary, you're really becoming like your father, stubborn and self-centered. Learn from Caitlin, at least she's thinking about her future. Her words were always laced with thorns. No matter what I did, it was insufficient, wrong. Sometimes, her remarks would cut me to tears. But now, after all these years, I was used to it. That was just our relationship. I checked the mail on the table. Bills, advertisements. I'd hoped for a letter from Caitlin. But lately, her communication had dwindled to almost nothing. Caitlin graduated from law school and now works at a major firm here in the city. Much of her college expenses came from Dad's insurance money and, honestly, a good chunk of my own savings. I chose to prioritize her future over my career, and I don't regret it. I wanted her to have a wonderful life, and she was certainly making that happen. A few months ago, I heard Caitlin got engaged to Ryan Johnson, another lawyer at her firm. I didn't hear it from her directly, though. It was Mom on the phone. Caitlin is engaged to Ryan. Isn't it wonderful? He's from a top university, a promising young lawyer, the first success story in our family. Her words held an unspoken message, not you. In her eyes, I was just a nurse, not successful enough. Since then, I'd heard bits and pieces about the wedding preparations, but I hadn't received an invitation. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just a mail delay or something silly like that. But as the days turned into weeks, a cold anxiety started to grow in my stomach. I'm family. Of course I'd be invited. Right. I wanted to believe it so badly. Mary, she's busy. Wedding preparations are demanding, you know that. That was Mom's dismissive response when I finally mustered the courage to call and ask last week. I couldn't even reach Caitlin directly. Messages or calls from her were rare. I kept telling myself, she's just busy. I picked up my smartphone and looked at the last text message from Caitlin. It was from 3 months ago. Thank you, Mary. I was really happy. Ryan also liked your present. Let's meet soon. Soon had never arrived. It was strange, though. I'd actually built a good relationship with Ryan's family, especially his mother, Barbara. We met by chance through a mutual acquaintance and just clicked. Barbara was a former nurse herself, now working for a healthcare NPO. We bonded over medicine, often chatting over tea at a local cafe. Mary, you're truly a thoughtful person, she once told me. Caitlin always says she's proud of you. I was surprised to hear Caitlin still talked about me and that she said nice things. It was reassuring, a small comfort in the sea of my mother's negativity. After dinner and a shower, I started preparing for tomorrow. It was my rare day off. No special plans, just a much-needed chance to relax. Lying in bed, my thoughts drifted back to the wedding invitation. The wedding was next month already. Was there still time? Should I buy a dress? What would be a good present? What did Caitlin need? With these thoughts swirling, I drifted off to sleep. The morning of the wedding day. I woke up early, the soft morning sun streaming through the window, painting my room in a pale orange glow. Today was my sister Caitlin's special day. The invitation never arrived, but I believed, with all my heart, that as family I had to be there. It's what I wanted to believe. From my closet, I carefully pulled out the pastel blue dress I'd bought last month just for this occasion. It was Dad's favorite color. It wasn't an expensive dress, but for someone living as modestly as I did, it felt like a luxury. Standing before the mirror, I fixed my hair into an updo, then attached the pearl earrings, a keepsake from my father, to my earlobes. Simple, elegant. At least today you look somewhat decent. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, a familiar taunt. But today, of all days, I refused to let her words spoil this. On the bed lay my gift for Caitlin, a handmade blanket I'd knitted over 2 months. White yarn, woven with small blue flower patterns, a design symbolizing purity and happiness in married life. It was modeled after a legendary blanket Dad had given Mom when he proposed, a story I'd heard countless times. One of the few happy family memories my mother ever shared. I hope Caitlin likes it, I whispered, carefully wrapping it in paper, tying a delicate ribbon. On the card I simply wrote, "Wishing you eternal happiness." Sometimes, fewer words resonate more deeply. I called a taxi and headed to the luxurious downtown hotel. Chicago's cityscape, bustling with its usual routine, blurred past the window. My heart was a turbulent mix of emotions, joy, anxious expectation, and a lingering doubt. I desperately wanted to celebrate my sister's day, but I couldn't shake the question, why no invitation? Windsor Hotel, the taxi driver announced, pulling up to the grand entrance. "Thank you," I said, my voice a little shaky as I paid the fare. I took a deep breath and stepped out. The hotel lobby was opulent, gleaming marble floors, massive chandeliers, elaborate flower arrangements everywhere. Just as Mom had always said, Caitlin had chosen the finest venue. The wedding reception was set up at the entrance to a huge hall, complete with a balcony overlooking the city. A young female staff member greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning. May I have the name on your invitation?" Trying to sound as natural as possible despite my churning nerves, I said, "Mary Wilson." The staff member scanned her list, then slowly, deliberately, traced it with her finger to double-check. I watched her expression cloud over, concern etched on her face. "I'm sorry, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Your name isn't on the list." For a moment, my mind went blank. This had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. An oversight, surely. "Could you please check again?" "Mary Wilson. I'm the bride's sister." The staff member checked again, even consulting quietly with a colleague. Her troubled face, the whispered conversation, it told me this was no simple mistake. "I'm very sorry, Miss Wilson. Your name isn't here." A tight, cold sensation spread through my chest. Was this just an oversight, a genuine error? Or was it the possibility I didn't want to consider? There must be some mistake. "Is my mother, Eleanor Wilson, inside?" The staff member nodded apologetically. "Yes, Mrs. Wilson is already in the venue." Still clutching Caitlin's gift, I entered the venue, permission granted. The elaborately decorated hall was already filled with guests. Amidst a sea of unfamiliar faces, I spotted my mother. She was laughing, champagne glass in hand, chatting animatedly with a group. My heart pounded. I slowly approached her. When she saw me, her smile faltered, her expression briefly freezing, but she quickly recovered, turning back to her companions to finish her conversation. "They told me at reception that my name isn't on the list," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Is there some mistake?" Eleanor looked me up and down, a cold appraisal of my dress, my hair, my very presence. Then she put on a chilling smile. That familiar contempt, so clear in her eyes. There's no mistake. Her voice was low, controlled, so those around us couldn't hear. Did you honestly think you were invited? Outsiders aren't allowed. Those words, they hurt more than I ever expected. I thought I was mentally prepared for her callousness. But this, I wasn't ready emotionally. Even if our relationship had cooled, even if she always favored Caitlin, I never imagined she would exclude me from such an important family day. But what about Caitlin? I asked, my voice trembling. Doesn't she want me here either? Caitlin is about to begin a happy married life. She doesn't need reminders of failures like you. Eleanor's words stung like poison needles. At that exact moment, I caught sight of a familiar figure in the corner of the venue, Barbara Johnson, Ryan's mother. She seemed to have overheard the tail end of our conversation, a look of surprise and concern on her face. I took a deep breath, fighting back the surge of emotions. I couldn't let the tears show. I wouldn't give my mother the satisfaction of seeing me weak. I see, I said, my voice quiet but resolute. I understand. Then I'll live my life as an outsider, too. I placed the handmade blanket, my heartfelt gift, on a nearby table. This is for Caitlin. Would you give it to her? That is, if it's not too much of a burden for you. As I turned to leave, Barbara gently took my arm. Mary, wait. What's happening? Caitlin said she wanted you to come. She was talking about you just last week. I was so confused. Barbara's words and Eleanor's cold accusation, between these two utterly incompatible stories, I couldn't discern the truth. Barbara, this is a family matter. Please don't interfere. Eleanor admonished, her tone stern. Barbara, it's all right, I interrupted, a gentle smile on my face. Today is my sister's important day. I don't want to cause any problems. Barbara looked like she wanted to say more, but I squeezed her hand gently, simply saying, thank you, before walking away. When I stepped outside the hotel, the sky was clear, but my heart was in a turmoil, a brewing storm. I hailed a taxi. I want to go home, I said, my voice choked. The driver, seeing me fighting back tears in the back seat, kindly started driving without asking any questions. Meanwhile, inside, the wedding preparations were in their final stages. Music played softly, guests were starting to take their seats. Then, the announcement signaling the start of the ceremony echoed through the hall. Eleanor's smartphone began to ring. At first, she tried to ignore it, but when it wouldn't stop, she gave an apologetic glance to those around her and stepped outside the venue. Where is Mary? I said I wanted to see her before the ceremony. It was Caitlin's excited voice. Eleanor was momentarily speechless. She didn't come, she lied, her own voice sounding hollow. What? But Barbara says she saw Mary. She was at the venue. At that moment, Eleanor saw Barbara talking to Caitlin, her expression grave, clearly telling her the truth. When Eleanor returned to the venue, the ceremony had already begun. Caitlin, radiant in her beautiful wedding gown, was making her entrance. Yet, there seemed to be a flicker of hesitation in her expression. As the priest's words continued, Caitlin suddenly looked around, confusion turning to distress. She stood up. Where's Mary? At Caitlin's question, the entire venue fell silent. Her voice, though beautiful in her pure white dress, was tinged with anxiety and confusion. The groom, Ryan, looked bewildered. Kate, what's wrong? Let's continue the ceremony. Wait, Ryan. Caitlin shook her head. Mary, she's not here. My sister isn't here. A small murmur spread among the guests. The priest looked around nervously, unsure how to respond. Then, Barbara stood up and stepped forward. Her expression was stern, as if about to announce something serious. Caitlin, Mary was here, she began, choosing her words carefully, glancing briefly at Eleanor. But she left. What? What do you mean? Caitlin's voice trembled. Barbara took a deep breath and continued quietly. Mary was told her name wasn't on the guest list and wasn't allowed into the venue. The color drained from Caitlin's face. She looked at Eleanor, her voice a raw whisper. Mom, what does this mean? Mary is my sister. Why did you remove her name from the invitation list? Eleanor, acutely aware of all eyes on her, showed an uncomfortable expression. She seemed to shrink, shrugging her shoulders as she began making excuses in a low voice. Caitlin, this is your special day. If Mary came, she would try to steal the attention, as always. I just wanted to prevent her from stealing the spotlight on your big day. She always needs to be the center of attention. Anger flared in Caitlin's eyes. That's not true. Mary has never been jealous of me or tried to steal attention. She's always supported me. Eleanor scoffed. You just don't know her true nature. I was only trying to protect you. The murmuring in the venue grew louder, and Ryan looked at his parents, utterly confused. Robert Johnson, Ryan's father, who had been sitting next to Barbara, stood up. He was a tall, dignified man, a senior partner at the law firm. What is the meaning of this? Robert's voice was low, but carried immense power. We thought today was a blessed day when two families would become one. But what's happening before our eyes is... He cut off his words, staring intently at Eleanor. I never thought we would welcome our children into a family like this. I don't want to be associated with people who exclude their own family. At those words, the venue froze in tension. Caitlin covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking. The train of her wedding dress spread across the floor, making her look both beautiful and heartbreakingly sad. Ryan rushed to her side, embracing her shoulders. It's okay. I'm here for you, he whispered gently, taking her trembling hand. I'm going to call Mary, Caitlin said, pulling out her smartphone through tears, and dial my number. The ringtone continued, but there was no answer. She's not answering, she muttered, a desperate expression on her face. Ryan squeezed her hand. She's hurt. She needs time. Caitlin tried calling once more, but still no answer. She let out a deep sigh, then raised her tear-soaked face. She began speaking to all the gathered guests. Everyone, I'm truly sorry that things have turned out this way today. Her voice was shaking, but gradually regained its strength. Actually, there's something I hadn't realized until now. She looked at Eleanor for a moment, then continued. Mom has been keeping Mary away for months. She wanted me to think all my success was my own achievement, but I wouldn't be here today without Mary. Holding Ryan's hand, Caitlin began reflecting on her past. I was able to go to law school because Mary helped with the tuition. She sacrificed her own career to care for Dad and support my dreams. When I went to my first job interview, she bought me a suit and practiced with me repeatedly. Many guests showed sympathetic expressions. Eleanor blushed, lowering her gaze to the floor. And this dress I'm wearing today? Caitlin slightly lifted the hem of her wedding gown. I wanted to consult with Mary when choosing it, but Mom said Mary was too busy. Her voice broke off, and fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. Barbara approached Caitlin and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Mary is truly a wonderful person. Barbara's voice was soft. She's always talking about how much she loves you. Every time we meet, she asks, "How is Caitlin? Are her wedding preparations going well?" At those words, Caitlin's expression crumbled further. I'm the worst sister, taking everything Mary did for me for granted. Ryan stepped forward, as if having made a difficult decision. Everyone, I apologize, but we're postponing today's ceremony. Various reactions spread through the venue. Sounds of surprise, nods of understanding, small sighs. We believe a true wedding can only happen when the entire family is together, Ryan said with unwavering resolution. Without Mary, Caitlin's sister, this ceremony is incomplete. Caitlin looked at Ryan with profound gratitude and squeezed his hand tightly. Thank you, she whispered softly. Ryan's father, Robert, stepped forward and politely apologized to the gathered guests. Ladies and gentlemen, despite many of you traveling from afar, we have come to this conclusion. Please understand our decision. Then he turned to Eleanor with a stern expression. I cannot trust someone who doesn't value family. How could you do something so despicable? Eleanor was at a complete loss for words, standing motionless, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. It was the moment when the false image she had built over the years crumbled in an instant. Caitlin lifted the hem of her wedding dress with one hand, clutching her smartphone with the other. I need to find Mary. I need to apologize to her. Ryan nodded and placed his jacket over Caitlin's shoulders. Let's go together. The two began walking toward the venue doors. On the way, Caitlin stopped, turned back, and looked at Eleanor. Mom, I can't easily forgive what happened today. But you are my mother. I hope there will be a day when we can reconcile. Eleanor couldn't say anything, just crying silently. Caitlin and Ryan held hands and left the venue. Behind them, Robert and Barbara were handling the guests. Barbara called out to Caitlin, When you find Mary, Tell her we send our love, too. After they left the venue, a beautiful sunset spread across the sky. Caitlin took a deep breath. I know where Mary is, she said, pulling Ryan toward the car. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building in North Chicago. It was where I had once lived with my father, and I continued to live there after his death, cherishing every memory. From the window, I could see a small park, its changing seasonal views my only comfort. Having returned from the wedding, I sat on the sofa by the window, still in my formal attire, ignoring my constantly ringing smartphone. I just stared outside. In the park, children played, parents watched with smiles, a scene that made one feel the warmth of family. Family, I whispered softly. Something felt profoundly broken inside me after today's events. My tears had already dried, leaving only emptiness in my heart. I'll live as an outsider. I stood up and headed to the closet to take off the dress. I'd probably never wear it again. Around 7 p.m., a sudden knock sounded at the door. I didn't respond, hoping whoever it was would eventually leave. But the knocking continued, persistent. Then voices. Mary! Open up, please. It was Caitlin's voice. I didn't move. Mary! We're here. Let us talk to you. This time, it was Barbara's voice. I was utterly confused. Barbara! Here too. Mary, I understand how you feel, but could you please open the door? A male voice, probably Ryan. Hesitantly, I walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Caitlin, still in her wedding dress, her eyes red and swollen. Ryan, Barbara, and Robert stood beside her. Taking a deep breath, I slowly opened the door. Mary! Caitlin couldn't wait and rushed in, clinging to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice was thick with tears, her body trembling. I was surprisingly calm. Caitlin, what about your wedding? Why are you here? Ryan stepped forward and quietly explained. We postponed the ceremony. We felt the wedding without you would be meaningless. I was speechless. Ryan's parents also stood there, smiling gently. Barbara softly said, May we come in? I nodded silently and led everyone into my small apartment. It was cozy, filled with photographs of memories with my father, medical books, and novels lining the bookshelf. Caitlin, still crying, took my hand. I had no idea you were removed from the list. Please believe me. We learned the truth at the venue. Robert continued, his voice calm but with a remnant of anger. Your mother. Mom removed my name, I said in a flat voice. I'm not surprised. But why? Caitlin asked, utterly confused. Why would she do such a thing? I sat on the sofa and shrugged wearily. Mom has always loved you more than me. I was just a nuisance. That's not true. Caitlin raised her voice. And there's something even worse. With trembling hands, she took out her smartphone and began searching for something. Barbara told me Mom has been lying to me about you for years. Lying? I asked. Look at this. Caitlin handed me her smartphone. The screen displayed old text messages from Eleanor to Caitlin from 2 years ago. Mary says she can't come to your graduation. She's too busy. Don't worry, we'll celebrate just us. My eyes widened. That's a lie. I applied for time off work that day, but Mom said you didn't want me to come. Caitlin showed me another message. Birthday present for Mary? Nothing has arrived from her. Don't worry, she's always too busy with her own life. My voice trembled. I sent presents every year. I asked Mom to give them to you. Barbara quietly explained. Mom has been lying to Caitlin for years, making her believe Mary was neglecting the family. She also had letters and gifts from Mary, deliberately destroying the sisters' relationship. Why didn't I notice? Caitlin said, blaming herself. I should have questioned what Mom was saying. I remember all you did for me. She took both my hands and looked at me with a serious expression. Law school tuition, the suit for my first job interview, nursing Dad during his illness, it was all thanks to you. And yet tears welled up in my eyes. I had never felt such complex emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and love all mixed together. But why? Why would Mom go so far? I asked, my voice small. Ryan quietly said, I think Eleanor wanted to take all the credit for Caitlin's success. Mary's existence threatened that narrative. Mom was crying when we left the venue, Caitlin said. But honestly, I don't feel I can forgive her yet. Silence filled the room. I stared out the window, lost in thought for a long time. Then, slowly raising my face, I looked at my sister. You are my sister. That will never change. My voice was soft but strong. What Mom did, it may take time to forgive. But it's not your fault. Caitlin showed an expression of profound relief and embraced me again. The sisters held each other for a long time, as if reclaiming the bond that had been lost for years. Ryan gently approached us. Mary, we want you at our wedding. The postponed one, of course. I'd be delighted. I smiled, my first genuine smile in what felt like forever. Barbara placed a hand on my shoulder. You're already part of our family, Mary. We won't let anyone keep you away anymore. Robert nodded. In our house, family is treasured. That's what matters most. That night, we talked until late, like filling in a gap created over years. We reminisced about the past. I spoke of memories with our father, Caitlin's childhood adventures, and the good times we'd spent together. Remember that summer when Dad took us to the lake? I asked, nostalgically. Of course. Caitlin laughed. When I almost drowned and you jumped in to save me. Dad called you our family hero after that. As the night grew late, Barbara and Robert decided to leave. We'll come again tomorrow, Barbara promised, giving me a tight hug. Caitlin and Ryan stood up too, but I stopped them. Why don't you stay here tonight? I'll pull out the sofa bed. The following Saturday, Caitlin and Ryan's wedding was held in a small garden, only close friends and family invited. This time, I stood beside my sister as the maid of honor. An invitation was also sent to Eleanor. At first, I hesitated, but decided, she is our mother. We shouldn't cut her off completely. That kindness is your most wonderful quality, Barbara had said the day before. Eleanor visited my apartment that day. She looked older, with deep fatigue under her eyes. Mary! She struggled with words. Come in, I said quietly, leading her into the living room. I've come to apologize. Eleanor's voice was small, trembling. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to tell you. I knew Ryan's parents had persuaded Eleanor, fearing she might not be able to attend her son's wedding either. Still, it was the first time my mother had ever spoken words of apology. It will take time, I said honestly, but tomorrow is Caitlin's special day. Let's be at peace for her sake. Eleanor nodded silently. On the wedding day, while helping with preparations, I prepared a special gift. It was my father's keepsake, a beautiful sapphire necklace. Caitlin, this is for you. I handed the necklace to my sister. It's Dad's keepsake. He said he wanted you to wear it. Caitlin was too moved for words, simply embracing me. Dad would be happy, I said softly. The ceremony took place in an atmosphere of love and reconciliation. Eleanor sat quietly in her seat, watching her daughters. I arranged the hem of Caitlin's dress, and we smiled at each other. I'm so glad you're here, Caitlin whispered. I'm not going anywhere, I replied, a promise. Winter, 1 year later. Chicago was covered in snow once more. I returned to my apartment with tired steps after finishing my night shift. When I opened the door, warm air and the small, twinkling lights of a Christmas tree greeted me. My life had changed significantly over the past year. Lunch with Caitlin once a week had become our routine, sometimes in the busy hospital cafeteria, sometimes at our favorite restaurant downtown. We shared our daily lives and memories, making up for lost time. Remember that doll you wanted for Christmas when you were 5? I asked at lunch last week. Caitlin laughed nostalgically. Of course. I was waiting at the door for Dad to come home from work, and you said Santa is busy, so he asked Dad to bring it. In reality, I had used my own savings to buy that doll, going shopping secretly without my father knowing. My sister's smile was my greatest treasure. On the table was an invitation from Caitlin that had arrived recently. Merry Christmas! Please spend it with us at our home this year. The card had a handwritten postscript. I have something to tell you, something very special. I smiled. At lunch last week, Caitlin had hinted she was pregnant. There hadn't been an official announcement yet, but as her sister, I had intuited it. I couldn't have missed that special glow when I gently placed my hand on Caitlin's stomach. Meanwhile, my relationship with my mother, Eleanor, remained complex. Since the wedding, she had distanced herself from the family, living alone. Once the belle of society, Eleanor found herself ostracized as her manipulations and lies became known. Occasionally, I'd hear updates about her from Caitlin, but but I had avoided meeting Eleanor directly. "Mom is trying to change," Caitlin had said last month. "But it's not easy for her either." Eleanor had tried to contact me several times, but her messages and calls were brief and formal. Her pride still prevented her from uttering words of genuine apology. I took a shower and brewed a warm cup of tea. Outside the window, snow was falling more heavily. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Before spending time at Caitlin and Ryan's home, I had a short shift at the hospital. I sat on the sofa and gazed at my father's photograph. "Merry Christmas, Papa. This year will be a little different." The doorbell rang. I checked the clock. 10 p.m. Who could it be at this hour? Looking through the peephole, I saw Eleanor standing there, wearing a snow-covered coat and holding a small bag. Her face showed a mix of anxiety and determination. I hesitantly opened the door. "Mary!" Eleanor's voice was small, trembling. "Do you have time to talk?" I thought for a moment, then quietly nodded. "Come in. It must be cold." Eleanor came in, brushing off snow. She had changed. From her once dignified appearance, she now looked like just a tired, middle-aged woman. I took her coat and led her to the living room. "Would you like some tea?" "Thank you," Eleanor answered softly. We drank tea in silence. Snow continued to dance outside the window. Eleanor tried to speak several times, stopping each time, until finally she took a deep breath and began. "Mary, I was a terrible mother. I'm truly sorry for hurting you." Tears welled in her eyes. For a long time, I justified my actions and blamed others. But the truth is, I was wrong. I remained still, just listening to her words. "You always sacrificed yourself for the family, taking care of your father. Caitlin's tuition, you were a much better parent than I was." Eleanor's voice shook, but I didn't want to admit that. I was afraid to face my own failures. She placed the small bag on the table. "This isn't a gift. It's something I should return." When I opened the bag, inside was a small jewelry box. Opening it, I found diamond earrings that had been passed down from my maternal grandmother. After my father died, Eleanor had claimed they were lost. "These belong to you." "I stole them." Eleanor lowered her face. "I'm truly sorry." After a moment of silence, I quietly said, "Forgiveness isn't easy. I've been hurt by your words for a long time." I took a deep breath and continued, "But perhaps we can restore our relationship, step by step." A small light of hope appeared on Eleanor's face. "Tomorrow, there's a Christmas dinner at Caitlin and Ryan's home. Will you come?" I asked. "You are inviting me?" Eleanor looked surprised. "Because we're family," I answered simply. "Besides, Caitlin seems to have special news." The next day, Christmas Eve, Caitlin and Ryan's home was filled with warm light and laughter. Barbara and Robert had also come and were helping Caitlin with final preparations in the kitchen. When I arrived, my sister came rushing out to greet me. "Mary, you came." "Of course." I laughed. "Oh, and Mom is coming too." Caitlin was a bit surprised, but quickly smiled. "Really? That's wonderful." "Ryan, set one more place." A few minutes later, Eleanor appeared with small gifts. She greeted everyone with a nervous expression, looking particularly humbled toward Barbara and Robert. Barbara smiled and offered Eleanor a warm cup of cinnamon tea. We all make mistakes. What matters is the courage to acknowledge them and try to change. Before dinner, Caitlin and Ryan gathered everyone for a special announcement. "Everyone, we have wonderful news," Ryan said proudly. "Caitlin is pregnant. In 5 months, we'll become parents." Amid the congratulations echoing around the room, Caitlin took my hand. "Mary, I want you to be the godparent. Having someone with your kindness and strength beside this child." I nodded, tears in my eyes. "I'd be honored. I'll love this child with all my heart." Eleanor sat quietly, but tears also glistened in her eyes. "And Mom," Caitlin continued, "I want you involved in this child's life as a grandmother. The past is the past. What matters is what comes next." After dinner, I was alone by the window watching the snow scene. Eleanor quietly approached. "What a lovely family," she murmured. "It's thanks to you, Mary. Your kindness and thoughtfulness became the power that reconnected us all." I smiled. "It's thanks to all of us. Family doesn't work with just one person." Ultimately, my patience and love broke the chain of hatred and brought a new beginning. As my father had taught me, the power of forgiveness is immeasurable. Eleanor, after a long journey, began to understand the pain her actions had caused. She is now making daily efforts to become a true mother. It's not easy, but it's her own path of atonement to restore our family bonds. That night, when the whole family took a commemorative photo, I spoke to my father in my heart. Can you see, Papa? We've become a family again. In a different way, but definitely a family. Outside the window, snow continued to fall gently. The wounds of the past weren't completely healed, but a new light of hope quietly shone upon this reborn family. So that's my story. It was a long road, full of heartache and unexpected turns. Have you ever faced such deep betrayal from someone you loved? Or found forgiveness in a place you never expected? I really want to know what you think. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments below.